Welcome to Magic Beyond the Books. Today we are talking about Firenze the Centaur. I'm Renee.
And I'm Callan. Warning, there are Harry Potter spoilers in this episode. So, like Renee said, we're going to be talking about Firenze. He is a centaur who lives in the Forbidden Forest at Hogwarts. Firenze rescues Harry from Voldemort in Book 1 and later becomes Harry's divination teacher. But first, let's jump into our listener question.
Listener question of the week. What does butterbeer taste like? Does it taste like butter? Does it have butter in it? Does it have alcohol in it? So this is a multi-part question, listener question.
Yeah, this is the 5-part question of the week.
Yeah.
Butterbeer, I guess we'll do this in 2 categories because there's the Muggle interpretation of butterbeer that both Renee and I have had at Wizarding World of Harry Potter in Orlando. I don't know if they have different regional flavors of butterbeer. I think they're all basically the same across the different parts of the Muggle world of Harry Potter. So I was just referencing like New York if they sell butterbeer there, or in the UK if they sell butterbeer there. I think they're all the same. For when it comes to the real deal butterbeer, from the wiki, it says it's described as a less sickly butterscotch, which I never thought butterscotch was sickly. I've sort of liked butterscotch.
Yeah, I wonder if they're saying that like butterscotch can be really, really sweet. You know, when something's like overwhelmingly sweet, are they saying like it's less sweet than butterscotch?
It doesn't necessarily taste like butter, but it might taste like a sweeter butter, maybe. I don't really know. We're not doing a great job in describing the taste of butterbeer, at least in the Wizarding world, because we never really had it, right? It does not have butter in it, though. It has. If I was gonna guess, it's like fermented butterscotch. It's like the apple cider of butterscotch.
Yeah, I'm trying to look back in the books too, like quotes about it. It looks like they say that it's like foaming and that they describe it as being hot.
Oh, it was made out of butterscotch, sugar, and water, and it was slightly alcoholic. So I'm gonna guess probably like a 1%, 2%.
But butterbeer doesn't seem to get like first of all, the kids are drinking it. Like right. Harry and Hermione are drinking it when they're 13 years old, and they're not describing effects of being drunk, but apparently they talk about house elves getting drunk off of butterbeer.
Yeah, Winky gets absolutely turned off the stuff. So she uses it to drown her, memories of her previous master away, and how she failed him. So maybe it has a much stronger effect on smaller bodies, but I don't really know. I would assume it's like you said, because kids are drinking it. It's a lower alcohol content type of thing, but apparently it has enough to get Winky drunk. That's a funny term. I'm gonna get Winky drunk.
Yeah, that is butterbeer as far as in the context of the story. Yeah. If this question is about what butterbeer like at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter in Orlando or like any of the theme parks or anything, if the question is about like our butterbeer that we know and love in the Muggle world, that does not contain alcohol. Butter is included because butterscotch has butter, and then also a recipe that I found to make it included butterscotch, which contains butter, and then also contained butter extract. So you're getting more butter, I guess, that way.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I can share the recipe on our Instagram. But basically, the recipe that I found has cream soda, vanilla ice cream, butterscotch, butter extract, and then a thick like whipped cream on top. Basically, they did whipping cream and marshmallow fluff.
That sounds good. That does not sound like the one that is at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. That seems like a good one, like an actual good one. I think the Wizarding World of Harry Potter one, I think that it was just cream soda and then like whipped cream.
I don't know though. You think it was just cream soda in that?
Maybe a little bit.
Maybe
Maybe
we
a
need
little
to
bit.
try.
Maybe something extra, but not. I don't think it was. I don't think it was done up like what you were talking about with that homemade recipe.
Yeah, maybe not.
So to give it a little bit more pizzazz, they should, when you go get the butterbeer at the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, they should have those things that they have at movie theaters with the butter things. You know, where you can put your popcorn underneath the butter thing and just put just a ton of butter in there. That'd be good.
Yeah. I don't know. Do people know what cream soda is also?
I think people do. I had an idea of what it was, but I don't really make a habit of drinking cream soda all that often.
I feel like I don't see it like out. You know, like if you go to a restaurant, like do they even have cream soda as an option?
I doubt it. And it's usually the if not most dusty, second most dusty or third most dusty bottles in the grocery store. I don't even know how long that stuff lasts on the shelf. I've never bought a bottle of cream soda.
I only bought one to make this butterbeer recipe that I found, but I've never, other than excluding that, I don't think I've ever bought one. Like you said, I did look up cream soda is apparently it's a vanilla flavored soft drink and it's based on the taste of an ice cream float.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I could definitely see that. I definitely could see that, and it does do it justice. I think because whenever I've had cream soda, it does taste like a float.
Yeah. So basically, if I had to sum up my answer to this question, I would say butterbeer tastes kind of like butterscotch and vanilla ice cream. Maybe like it's sweet but not too sweet. There's no caffeine, and it's not. Like it's kind of bubbly, but not. I wouldn't describe it as super bubbly. Like it's not as bubbly as like a Coke or something.
Yeah, I think, and it doesn't have butter in it. It doesn't taste particularly like butter. It tastes like butterscotch. It doesn't have any alcohol in it, and like Renee said, it tastes like cream soda. So that sort of sums it up.
So back to the episode. Firenze. So, like Helen said, Firenze is a centaur. So I figured I'd give you guys some Fantastic Beast breakdown of centaurs. Would you like to hear it? So, just for reference, centaurs are a little bit complex. The Ministry of Magic has classifications for all beasts, right? So 1 being boring, 2 is harmless, may be domesticated, 3 is competent wizard can cope, 4 is dangerous, requires specialist knowledge, skilled wizard may handle, and 5 is a known wizard killer, impossible to train or domesticate. So centaurs are categorized as a 4, which is the dangerous one, but not because they're unduly aggressive, but because they're supposed to be treated with great respect, like a mer person or a unicorn.
Okay, gotcha. Do you know why they are categorized as beasts?
Apparently they requested it because they didn't want to be categorized as a being.
Yes. They don't want to be categorized as a being because they also saw that, and this is funny because I've only heard this word as like a really old type of insult, but they didn't want to be categorized in the same category as hags or vampires or other like weird type of in-betweener type of things. Those hags and vampires and some other like goblins, pixies, fairies, some of those ones, those are just classified as beings and not beasts. So there's 3 classifications. There's beings, beasts, and spirits.
Yes. And those are all the classifications that are like fall under the ministry's Department of Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, which I think this came about in the Wizards Council, which is like what preceded the Ministry of Magic. This like categorization of I want to say beings, but that's one of the categories of magical things.
And apparently, whenever they initially came up with this categorization system, there was a Minister of Magic who invited all the beings to a summit, because apparently the definition of a being is any creature that has sufficient intelligence to understand the laws of the magical community and to bear part of the responsibility in shaping those laws. So that is like the actual definition of a being. But whenever they were sort of trying to figure out what the definition would be, they threw around a bunch of different things. It was like, can it speak English? And if it could, then it would be classified as a being. But that sort of got broken because there was some like ferret type creature that could speak English, but it was just like they could speak nonsense. And then like,
yeah, and mer people don't speak English, but they are like, intelligent creatures, right?
yeah, and
So
they're
on the flip side of that.
Murmish, I believe that's what their language is called. It can't be understood above water. So I don't know. They were trying to figure out how to do that, but apparently they were trying to figure it out, and they had a summit, and they invited all these beings to a summit, and goblins had brought with them every creature they could find with 2 legs. So I think that was the initial definition, was like walking upright with 2 legs, and they were like, I'm going to name some: Duracalls, Auguries, Fwoopers, which I like that name, Pixies, Fairies, Trolls. And then when they were trying to like discuss everything, the summit descended into chaos when the trolls started to like destroy everything with their clubs. So I guess they were then at that point, trolls were like blacklisted, like, you're a beast now.
Yeah. Well, they're like violent and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so those are sort of the categorizations.
Yeah. So basically, as far as centaurs are concerned, they would be considered a being if not for their specific request, like Count said, to be in the beast division. And they're like, so even though they're in the beast division, so they have a centaur liaison office in the Ministry of Magic for them to work with them, because the centaurs basically said they want to manage their own affairs separate from wizards. And mer people have done the same thing, but there is that special centaur liaison office for them that they don't use. So it's just kind of there. Yeah. So apparently it's the running joke in the ministry is basically like, if you get sent to the centaur liaison office, that's like the next step before being fired, because that's where they because there's nothing to do there.
Oh, okay. They, if you see a Zoom meeting pop up on your calendar that's meeting with HR at the Centaur liaison office, the writing is on the wall.
Exactly. But so centaurs, they have, in case you don't know what a centaur is in general, I mean, this kind of goes into other things outside of Harry Potter, but it's basically human head and torso and arms, and then a horse's body and legs and everything. Mm-hmm. And that's the same for the Harry Potter universe. The horse body can be like several different colors, and they're intelligent. They're capable of speech. Like they can, they speak English. They converse with wizards in the Harry Potter universe. They live in herds of about 10 to 50 centaurs, which makes sense because like horses are herd animals, and they dwell in forests, and they originated in Greece. But now in the present day wizarding world, centaur communities are throughout Europe, and the ministry allocates areas for them to not be troubled by muggles. So I believe like the Forbidden Forest would be an example of like an area that's allocated by the ministry for centaurs. But I don't know that it's really necessary, because apparently centaurs have their own ways of like hiding from muggles. I don't think they really need wizard protection. And in general, centaurs are pretty distrustful of wizards and muggles, and they just kind of see them like they don't see as much differentiation between wizards and muggles. In centaurs' minds, they would like group them together.
Yeah, they look down upon wizards, I feel like. They're very prideful of, maybe they don't look down upon wizards, but they see them as this force that's trying to take all their stuff away and take all their rights and impose the new laws on their society and stuff like that they don't really see as necessary. So
if this is a quote from the Fantastic Beasts book, the ways of the centaur are shrouded in mystery. Wizards don't even really know, I think, everything about centaurs. They're supposed to be well versed in magical healing, divination, archery, and astronomy. And I even looked back in the books too. Firenze says that have unraveled the mysteries of the planetary movements over the centuries, and their findings teach them that the future may be glimpsed in the sky. So they definitely seem like they have some sort of like future prediction based on the stars. That like I think they know a lot more than they let on to wizards, basically.
Yeah, and I think that they're natural seers, and that's sort of the term that the wizarding world uses for people who can prophesize and see things into the future, right? Or are gifted in divination. I would think that the type of abilities that the centaurs have, they seem more like what I would think a real seer or a real person who could prophesize things would have. Like, it seems like the seers, and I don't know anything about Trelawney's grandma or whoever was a seer before her, but
Hmm.
Trelawney, she seems like she's just shotgun approach, just like she's going to say a bunch of stuff, and if some of them seem to be true, she's going to claim credit for it. The centaurs, they seem more deliberate and a little bit more understanding that they're not going to know everything, but they're going to be able to glean some pretty important information, like the planets and their movements and whatever. They're not going to be able to tell you if tomorrow your shoe's going to be untied or tomorrow you're going to be late for the train, but they have like broad, big, macro type of information that they can glean from the stars.
Trelawney's predictions are, oh, you're going to break this teacup, or, you're going to get bad news on this day. And the centaur's predictions are like, we're in a gap between two wizard wars. And it's like, it's across years, and they might be off by years, but they're talking about like more big events, not so much like little things that Trelawney's just spewing out.
Yeah, Trelawney's like, that like Neville, that klutz that's in your class, he's gonna like trip like 20 times this year, and then somebody else is gonna be like, well, yeah, duh, like we already knew that, and we know that's gonna happen. I think a good quote, and probably my favorite quote from Firenze that I found was, he had just been appointed to the divination post in book 5. I guess I'm jumping a little bit in the timeline, but this sort of describes how the centaurs and Firenze himself interprets their sort of divination. Pravarti Patel is talking about how Trelawney has taught them that planets can affect humans in different ways, and they can make various predictions based on the planet's movements. Firenze responds and he says, that is human nonsense. Trivial hurts, tiny human accidents, and these are of no more significance than the scurryings of ants to the wide universe, and are unaffected by planetary movements. I think that really illustrates how their approach.
Yeah, that was my favorite quote from him too. Even he, like, to expand on, like, he follows that up too by saying Pravarti tries to like defend Professor Trelawney, and he says basically she's a human and therefore blinkered and fettered by the limitations of your kind. That whole conversation, I loved his whole divination class. I feel like it's sad we didn't really get that in the movies, because that's so eye-opening to like how the centaurs are seeing things and how they see humans, which isn't really exposed. And I don't think the centaurs wanted him to teach for that very reason, is he's really exposing like a lot of their like inner workings, right?
Yeah. One of the things that seems like the Ministry of Magic does is they try to artificially reduce the influence of all these magical creatures, because they want them to seem lesser than, and not as take away their agency. So like if you can reduce something or someone to lesser than you're less likely to empathize with them, or give their opinions any credence or any influence to your own opinion. So if you can make these centaurs sort of seem like weird fugazi, like star dwellers, or star what's the word I'm looking for, like stargazers,
Gazers.
then you can kind of just discredit all their opinions and all their other sort of feelings towards the world. They do the same thing with house elves, where like house elves have an incredible amount of magical ability, but they are artificially restricted in using that magical ability, and they can't hurt their masters, or they can't do this and that because they want them to seem lesser than to the wizarding world, and that would hurt the Ministry of Magic's ability to influence wizards. So yeah, and they do that with all the magical creatures. Those are just two examples.
Yeah, definitely.
I did find it funny that quote that I said, that is human nonsense, blah 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 blah, we're unaffected by planetary movements. That is both, you could put that quote in the mouth of a physicist, or you could put that quote in a guy who gets way too high and watches Interstellar.
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. If I'm putting myself in the position of living in the magical world, I think I wouldn't have a lot of patience for centaurs.
Yeah. Just tell me what you want to know. Like, or tell me what you're thinking, don't make it a riddle.
Yes, it seems like they're very they're asked a direct question. You wait for 5 minutes of silence, and then they say something like, "The moon is really bright." And you're like, "What? What?"
Yeah. I don't really want to get pinned down to anything.
Exactly. We're on our own schedule. We manage our own culture, and we'll kind of be, if you could call it friendly, we'll be, we won't necessarily outright kill you when we on site, but we're not really going to tell you what we're thinking. We're not really going to tell you the future that we know.
And what's weird to me is that in that class, I believe, is when he mentions that thing where he's talking about you're in the wizarding world is in the middle of two wars, or in the calm period between two wars. And I feel like there would be a little bit more of a reaction in the real world, especially because I think the analog between these two wizarding worlds is these two wizarding wars is the two world wars, right? And if you told a person in 1928 or something like that, if you asked them oh yeah, World War One was not very good or whatever, and then they're like, World War One, yeah,
yeah,
what's the next one? I feel like there would be a lot more if it was doing it justice. JK would have a little bit more of a reaction from the students, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Harry, Ron, and Hermione know, or I guess Hermione's not in this class. Harry and Ron know, I guess, that Voldemort's back, and they probably are like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Voldemort's about to cause some havoc, I guess. But the rest of the students, aren't they wait, what?
Yeah, there needs to be a couple more spit takes in that scene where they're spitting out water or something when he says that.
They had more of a reaction to Professor Trelawney being insulted.
Yeah. They were more taken aback by that than there's going to be another wizarding war. Pavarti Patel needs to really reassess her priorities.
Her priorities there, yeah.
But let's go back to the timeline, I guess, because I kind of skipped over that.
Going through Firenze's timeline in the books, which it kind of aligns in the first movie as well. We as the audience and Harry meet him in the Forbidden Forest, when Harry's doing his detention. And that's the same instance when he runs into the Voldemort drinking the unicorn blood, and Firenze basically saves him. In the books, he rides on Firenze and they ride away from the scene, and you kind of get a little more of other centaurs and their reaction to him doing this thing. But in the movies, he just kind of they meet up and he saves him, and they have a little chit chat about Voldemort, and then he, goes on his way.
Yeah, in the movies, you don't really get the pride side of the centaurs, where they, I think it was Bane and Ronan, right? Are their names? They come across Firenze rescuing Harry, and they really look down on Firenze for doing this. This is a very, very dishonorable thing to do. They look at him like a donkey or some sort of actual beast, not necessarily a being that they're capable of thinking and complex thought, right? And so in the movies, you don't really get that, because it's Firenze scares Voldemort away, and then Hagrid and the rest of them just sort of walk up, and then that's the end of that. And you don't get to meet the other centaurs and get to see their opinion of what Firenze has done, what Firenze has made himself of.
Yeah, they did not like that he let Harry ride on his back, and I think also that he interfered, because like we said before with centaurs, it seems like they are aware of the future but don't feel that they should intervene in what's going on to affect the events that have been laid out by the planets, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very Star Trek of them. There's bigger plans than just the simple emotions that Firenze had in that moment where he's trying to protect Harry.
Of their herd in the Forbidden Forest, Firenze strikes me as the young one that doesn't really like to follow the rules, or maybe has like kind of revolutionary different ideas from what the group wants, the herd to follow.
Yeah, definitely. He seems like the rebel guy with a cause. I guess trope of that type of character is probably used throughout literature and in storytelling, but like the young rebel who doesn't necessarily see the same as, like you were saying, his herd.
So after we meet Firenze in the forest in book 1, he doesn't really come back for a while. The biggest next thing we have is in book 5, which is the Order of the Phoenix book. He basically betrays his herd and agrees to work as a teacher, a divination teacher for Dumbledore. And his herd, probably led by Bane, tries to kill him, and Hagrid rescues him, and then he basically goes and teaches at Hogwarts.
Yeah, it's funny because in his first teaching, lesson, Harry notices that he has a giant hoof mark in his chest. He wonders where that came from or whatever. But yeah, I don't know how close he came to death, but he definitely was on the hit list for sure with that one. He was cast out and sort of banished by his herd. Was it because he accepted the role as a teacher, or was there another thing where he did something, was banished, and then Dumbledore sort of brought him in because he was banished?
No, he got banished because he agreed to work for Dumbledore.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
I mean, we saw him do the thing with Harry, and I'm sure he did other things that the herd didn't like leading up to that. But yeah, I mean, they tried to kill him. They basically tried to kill him. Hagrid rescues him, and he gets away and has to avoid the forest to not be killed. So I don't know if banished is the right word. It's more like on the run, but yeah.
Yeah, he's always been a bad apple, is what we're trying to say.
Yeah. The black sheep of the herd.
Mm-hmm.
The black horse, even though he's not supposed to be a black horse, but
yeah, isn't he supposed to be blonde and gorgeous?
Yes.
A gorgeous horseman. Centaur.
Yes.
They actually take offense to being referenced as a horse, because who does he somebody says that in the actually it's you know what, there's another thing. Hermione calls him a horse at one point in the books, because I think before his first class, Hermione is trying to, I don't know necessarily what the conversation was, but I think she's trying to make fun of Pavarti and Lavender for, I guess, finding him attractive. And then Hermione references as I don't want to be taught divination by a horse or something like that, which kind of made me weird, was an odd choice for her character, because I know that she was very when she had the elf, I don't remember what the acronym, Spew. Yeah. The Spew organization, she was very adamant that elves should be treated as equals, right? But here she is kind of using a slur as for a centaur.
Yeah, Hermione has some bad moves with centaurs, like bringing Umbridge into the forest and trying to use the centaurs kind of to save them.
Yeah, she really does use them a little bit too much. She is sort of fallen for the accepted knowledge of centaurs that the ministry is kind of putting out, that they're sort of barbaric or whatever horsemen.
I think, though, something that I've noticed, especially rereading the series a bunch of times, is that Hermione learns from her mistakes. They show it time and time again. So, like, a great example is she loves books, she loves to read, she believes the facts that she reads in books. Then she learns that Gilderoy is a fraud, and those were, like, there was incorrect information in books. And then later in the 5th book, they show her talking to Umbridge and kind of questioning things that are written in a book and like disagreeing with a book and, you know, kind of more critically thinking instead of just taking things as they're written. So I feel like she made some really bad moves with centaurs. I imagine after, especially that instance in the forest with Umbridge and the centaurs, I imagine that she kind of like really figured out centaurs are not to be used or abused or anything, you know?
Yeah. I guess that is a very good case for being book smart or being street smart versus book smart, because Hermione is just like, oh, people can like lie in these things. You know, I thought this was all like edited and truth and publisher went through this book or whatever. But no, people can just write things down and publish it and do whatever they want. And then Harry but I mean, not to excuse either Harry or Ron, who they've never read a book in their life and they're just kind of like skating by or whatever. And obviously I'm exaggerating by saying they never read a book in their life, but they're definitely not as book smart as Hermione. So there's the grass is always greener.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think Hermione starts out very like, you know, very much a rule follower, very much like, you know, strict and everything. And then I think as the book goes on, she sort of starts to rebel more and starts to kind of grow into her own and everything, and changes over time and becomes a little bit less strict, a little bit more of a rule breaker, right? Mm-hmm. Or like she's Dumbledore's army was her idea, right?
But yeah, so he was Firenze was a teacher. Obviously, we've been sort of talking about the things that, you know, kind of fall along with that teaching post. He actually was still a teacher during the time when Dumbledore wasn't the headmaster, when Snape was the headmaster, and then we eventually see him at Dumbledore's funeral, and then also at the Battle of Hogwarts. And he's injured badly at the Battle of Hogwarts, but then at the end he's shown sort of recovering on the side while everybody's sort of celebrating or whatever. And then that is sort of the last we see him in the book series or in the main series. I think that there is some references to him in other pieces of media that have come out, like little games or whatever that sort of add to the Firenze timeline, but that's sort of where the main content of Firenze sort of ends. Mm-hmm. There is one thing I found just sort of like fun facts about him. So Firenze is the 4th known professor to not be completely human. Can you name the other 3?
Okay, so definitely Professor Binns is a ghost. Does that count?
Okay, so I'm gonna say it does count. It was not on this list, so technically 5. So let's.
I mean, he's technically a human. He's a ghost, but yeah.
Do non-spirits part human professors. There was a lot of tags on that.
Okay. So Professor Flitwick is supposed to be like part goblin, right? Yeah. I think. Okay.
You sort of mentioned something earlier in the podcast. The moon looks really cool tonight.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Professor Lupin, he's a werewolf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're part human.
Yeah. Blimey, Renee, you can't get this one.
Oh, obviously Hagrid, he's part giant. I'm trying to think too much. Like, I'm like, was there a mer person?
Was there somebody who's part dragon?
Yeah, I'm like way off. Okay, yeah. So Hagrid, Lupin, and Flitwick.
Yes, yeah. And Flitwick was the one that I thought you might not get because I didn't know that. I didn't know he was part goblin. And I hope everybody liked my Hagrid impression. I said blimey, and that was my Hagrid impression. I sort of ruffled up my voice a little bit.
Yeah. The rough voice was what got me. I don't know so much about blimey, but okay, yeah. So yeah, I guess those all go under Dumbledore's, as Rita Skeeter would put it, quote unquote, questionable hiring decisions.
Yeah, those are all. Well, Flitwick is a talented one. Man, Flitwick could go up against anybody, and he's a dueling champion, right?
Yeah.
And then also to add on this, Firenze is the only Hogwarts professor who is not a wizard, both past and present.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess centaurs don't use wands.
Nope, they use bows and arrows, and they use their eyes to look at the stars, and that's really
And they use their hoofs to kick each other.
Yeah, exactly. They're brutes, but they're introspective brutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we go into Firenze's friends and foes?
Yes.
So under the friends category, I think we can pretty solidly put Hagrid.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, he saves his life. I think Hagrid's pretty friendly with him as when he goes in the forest, even though I think Hagrid doesn't have much patience either for the centaurs and all their woo-woo.
Yeah, he seems Hagrid, sometimes I feel like he's a to the point type of guy, but then other times he sort of like dances around things, obviously. But yeah, I think he definitely, there's a point to everybody's patience with the centaurs where they're just like, get to the point, please.
Yeah. Okay, so other friends of Firenze, Dumbledore gives him a job and kind of rescues him somewhat in the way of like keep giving him a home away from the Forbidden Forest.
He definitely, I don't know if he uses it as a sort of insult to Umbridge, right? But it sort of just is probably killing two birds with one stone, where it's like, I'm gonna help this guy out because I know he's a good guy. He's courageous. He rescued Harry for no, like, there was no actual like benefit to him to rescue Harry. And then also it's gonna piss off Umbridge when I hire this guy. And then also in his friends, definitely gonna be Harry Potter. He definitely has a soft spot for him, because even in the forest, when they're talking in the first book, they're talking about the planets, and the planets have spoken, and there's all these sort of things that the planets have said about what's going to happen in the forest and stuff like that. He has a soft spot for Harry, and he sort of rescues him and says, like, the planets have been wrong before, so like, why can't they be wrong now, or whatever. But that sort of gets into the theory that we kind of found about Firenze. There's not a ton of fan theories or anything like that about Firenze, but there seems to be one that they are highly suspective that Harry is supposed to die in the forest.
Yeah. I've seen it out there that basically the centaurs know that Harry's going to die in the forest. They seem to know, and they seem to also know that Voldemort is going to kill him in the forest. They don't seem to know exact timing on any of their predictions. So I guess the theory is really that the centaurs thought that in book 1 was the time when Harry was going to die.
Yeah. And that sort of gets back to the whole thing where we were talking about the time travel episode. I had this thing where there is, in time travel, there are certain things that always have to happen, right? Where if this thing happens, it just like doesn't follow mathematically or logically that time travel can happen, right? So if it's possible for people to be able to predict the future, right, then there has to be some sort of laws in place, like universal laws that say these things have to happen, because then it will have to happen this way, because they will always happen this way, because this person was able to see the future, right, or interpret some signs or whatever to see the future. So ironically, I think that Firenze is acting in the universe's benefit here, because it was never supposed to happen that Harry was supposed to die at that moment. And in this scenario, Ronan and Bane are mad at Firenze for essentially helping the universe out by not having it happen, where it would have been a bad, or the maybe not the worst time, but it was always supposed to happen, where Firenze saved Harry there, and then Harry died later.
Yeah, I mean,
spoiler alert: Harry dies at some point.
We said it from the beginning,
Yeah.
people. So, but yeah, I mean, I hope we didn't spoil it for anyone just there.
No, we spoiled. We said spoiler alert at the beginning, so that was more of a joke.
But yeah, I think it's very reasonable that they could have been 6-7 years off. I think this theory is supported by the fact that aside from Firenze, the other centaurs, they don't join the Battle of Hogwarts until after Harry is dead.
Okay, yeah, and that would definitely lend credence to that theory, because they're sort of like, we have to let this happen. We have to let the universe do what the universe is going to do. If it was foretold that this thing was going to happen, so we sort of need to have or need to allow this to happen.
Yeah, maybe they don't know the details, but something about what they saw in the future, it's like they knew that all the Horcruxes had to be destroyed before Voldemort would be destroyed. But they don't actually know it in that way. They know like Harry dying is a pivotal point that has to happen. Like it's a key, thing, and that's going to be the cue for them to like get involved.
Yeah.
I think this theory is correct. Like if I had to, I don't agree with a lot of the fan theories, but I think I agree with this one.
Yeah, I do too. I think that it's a very apt point. Like I think that, I don't know if JK designed it to be this way, but I would think that she would have, because she had the whole timeline probably thought out in the beginning and was sort of just giving little hints, obviously, as to what was going to happen, maybe leaving a little bit of a breadcrumb path. This is a very subtle breadcrumb, I think, especially in the first book, where you don't necessarily understand everything that's going on, the weight to everything that's going on. You don't even know that that's Voldemort at that point, or actually you do, because they don't they say that was Voldemort, or say that was some dark creature? I think.
Yeah, I think it's Voldemort, but I mean, like you don't really know that much about like what Voldemort is and everything like at that time.
Yeah, he's sort of just this like hazy interpretation of like evil or whatever. So yeah, I think that this theory is pretty spot on.
Yeah. By the way, that scene in the movie with like, the hooded Voldemort in the forest and Firenze, I feel like they made Firenze look so intimidating. Like this whole Forbidden Forest scene in the first movie scared the crap out of me when I was a little kid.
Yeah, it scared me too. Like this floating, like cloaked figure. That's definitely scary. And then on top of that, he's like eating a unicorn.
Yeah.
The most innocent animal that you could ever think of when you're a child or whatever.
Yeah, I think I watched this movie with my cousins, and I was in their room, and I like could not fall asleep, and I was just like so scared of this enigma villain, that faceless villain, right? It's so scary.
Yeah. And then did you watch the whole movie though? Because he got his face burned off, right? So you got to be a little bit less scared at the end, maybe, or maybe that scared you more that somebody's face got burned off.
I mean, I watched the whole movie, but I think just like that the movie happened and stuff, but it still like gives you the heebie-jeebies.
I don't watch horror movies at all. I don't mess with that. Yeah. So
I don't watch like anything the least bit scary. My tolerance for scary has like gone down so much. Like nowadays, I'm like kids movies or like comedies. I don't want to watch anything like scary or like violent or anything. I'm just like, I don't need the stress. I don't need to like worry about anything. I just want to like upbeat,
Yeah, scariest movie that Renee watches is Moana.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, this is like, there's a lot of drama here, people.
Yeah.
They're in the ocean, like anything could happen.
Are they gonna get his little hook thing back? I don't know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that theory is pretty spot on. And then that sort of takes us to his foes, because after, like we said earlier, after that scene when he rescues Harry. Oh, that's also another thing. People were complaining on Reddit about, what if instead of like instead of just like scaring him off, Firenze just like beat the shit out of Voldemort at that moment. Like instead of like kind of going up and sort of like doing his little his hooves at him, he just like went in there and just stomped him out. What he was in that point, is Voldemort just like a spirit? He kind of sort of just like dissipates and then comes back together or whatever, or is that Quirrell?
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. I think the movie shows it like he's a spirit, but I think in the book it's Quirrell doing it, being like, while Voldemort's kind of with him. I mean, I think if he, just to squash that Reddit thread, I think that if he did that, I mean, Voldemort's just going to hop out away from, like, Quirrell's going to die and then he's just going to move on, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that's going to get rid of Voldemort. And we know Voldemort has the Horcruxes anyway.
Yeah. I agree. It was just a funny little scenario that I thought that was funny. After that scene, it sort of takes us to his foes, which we've sort of already covered. Bane, the centaur, who seems to be the more disciplinarian, or the hard-nosed centaur, who's very, or maybe more of a, not necessarily any more hard-nosed than a stereotypical centaur would be. Like he's very prideful. He calls Firenze some names that aren't very nice in that scene. I can't remember what he specifically says, but something like a donkey or some sort of beast or
mule
simple
or
whatever.
yeah.
Mule, yes. And then on top of that, his centaur herd is also a foe of his. They try to basically beat the crap out of him. But then that also brings us to a not lesser known, because it's pretty apparent that these two don't like each other, but Professor Trelawney.
Yeah. I would think the hatred comes more from Trelawney towards Firenze. I don't think Firenze necessarily dislikes, Professor Trelawney any more than any other human, but she does not like splitting classes with him at all. For people that I don't even know, does it get brought up in the, I guess in the movies they don't show him as a teacher at all, right?
They don't show Firenze past the first book, really. Like
they just show other centaurs and
they just show other random centaurs that the only times they show centaurs are first book for Firenze, then they show the group of centaurs in the fifth book, and then do they have them show, or do they have them in the Deathly Hallows when the Battle of Hogwarts is happening? I don't know.
I can't remember. I'd have to look back at the movies, but I think they're in there, possibly, maybe a little bit. But yeah, but not like distinguished individual centaurs.
Let me show you this meme. This is how I believe that their relationship is. Let me pull.
It's one. Is this from Mad Men?
Yeah. So it's essentially, I think he's getting in the elevator. This is a Mad Men meme where I think they're in an elevator, and one of the guys is saying to another guy, he's saying, "I feel bad for you." And then the other guy says back to the original guy, he says, "I don't think about you at all." So that's, I think, what the relationship between Firenze and Trelawney is. Like Trelawney is an afterthought to Firenze.
Yeah, Trelawney's like getting drunk and complaining about how he's taking over her classes and she doesn't get to be the only divination teacher anymore and all this stuff. And then Firenze's like, "Wait, who are you?"
Yeah, why are you talking to me? Doesn't she like complain about him to other students as well? Like that's how they sort of get that's very unprofessional, Sybil.
Yeah, I mean, she does a lot of things that are unprofessional.
Yeah. I also think that she might be jealous of his classroom, because his classroom is pretty cool.
Yeah, he has a forest lookalike kind of classroom. Like it looks like you're in the forest, but you're just in a classroom. Mm-hmm. That's really cool. I like that idea. And I like the idea of like they're just basically laying in the grass and looking up, and he has this kind of stars look-alike ceiling in the classroom for them to look at and everything. Like this is like a dream classroom.
Yeah, this is like completely nullifying like any kids asking, "Can we have class outside?" Like class is always outside in Professor Firenze's classroom.
Yeah, this is probably like a better way for kids to learn anyway.
Definitely.
I did look up the name meaning behind Firenze. Would you like that?
I actually know it, but yes.
So I was very intrigued by this. Firenze, I got like I found a lot of definitions about like flourishing, flowering, blossoming, blooming, prosperous, all that. And then Firenze also, for people that don't know, like that's like the Italian name for Florence, which is a city in Italy. Like if you go over to Florence in Italy, they call it Firenze. Have you been to Florence?
Yeah, that was one of the places we went when my wife and I went to Italy. We went to Florence, we went to Rome, we went to the Amalfi Coast. But yes, Florence is a very very cool looking city. There's a big church there called the Duomo, so it's a cool looking city. And it's right next to Tuscany, so that's sort of where you go for like wine country. We went to a winery there.
I went to Florence when I was younger with my family and or Firenze, and I loved it. It was probably one of
You
my
can call it
favorite.
Florence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I loved it. I thought it was like a very like walkable city. It's not huge. You know, a lot of art and everything if you're into that. It's supposedly the birthplace of the Renaissance era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of commissioned art from I think the royal. I don't necessarily because back in the olden days, all of these cities like Florence, Rome, Naples, I guess the Italian name of it for Napoli, all of those cities were like independent city states. So in Florence, there was like one royal family, and they were the ones that commissioned all of these art pieces. And I think Michelangelo was commissioned by a lot this very prominent Florentine family. The statue of David is in Florence in one of those museums. They have multiple statues of David actually in that city. One of them is a replica, one of them is real. But yeah, so there's a lot of cool museums in Florence. It's a big art scene.
Yeah. Yeah, like Michelangelo's David, like the David sculpture. That's my favorite sculpture. First of all, it's massive. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
pictures don't give it justice.
Yeah, it's really big.
It's really big. It's so detailed, like the veins and the arm and everything, like even the proportions of his body are like cuz he's not an adult, right? It's a like young boy, like it's David and Goliath, right?
Yeah, I
So
think
like
he's
his
supposed to be like not adolescent, but like not an adult. So like probably like 16, 17, something like that.
yeah. So like if you go to get into like the background behind the sculpture, like so when you grow up, like your hands and feet kind of like outgrow you, and then your body fills in. So like his hands and feet are like not proportioned right, like a man's would, right? Like because he's a teenager, like stuff like that. Like there's just so much detail that went into it. So like it's one of my favorite art pieces, and seeing it in person is definitely like really cool. But yeah, like a bunch of like Birth of Venus, Primavera from Botticelli, Madonna de Cardellino from Raphael, all the Ninja Turtles, all the
Yeah.
art pieces. Like there's so many famous art pieces.
And they're all themed about pizza, right?
But yeah, and then also I saw, so Forbes ranked Florence one of the most beautiful cities in the world in 2010. And it's also been ranked one of the top 15 fashion capitals in the world. So it makes sense, like Renaissance, art, culture, like I guess it makes sense that Firenze is named that. It's an interesting name for him.
But I do think that he is way less cool if his name was Florence. Like
Yeah,
Florence seems a little bit nerdy.
yeah, I like the name. I like Firenze, and I like Firenze better than Florence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, the story is much different if his name is Florence. There's a
Yeah.
different reason that Florence was outcasted than Firenze. Florence was outcasted because he was nerdy.
Yeah.
Firenze is a rebel and courageous.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, Bane, you can't tell me what to do.
Yeah, and Florence would be like, Bane, please don't tell me what to do.
But yeah, should we get into our fan casting?
Yes, we should.
So, for a description of Firenze from the books, his depiction in the books is very different from the movie. So in the books, he's obviously like a centaur, man horse. He's described, like we said, as handsome. He's a bit younger than the other centaurs, for example, Bane and Ronan. He has white blonde hair that looks silver in the moonlight. and, quote, astonishingly blue eyes, look like pale sapphires. And he is a Palomino horse, body and tail. So that, if you don't know what Palomino means, it's like a light, like orangish tan kind of color. And usually they have like a white mane and tail.
Okay. I didn't know that was what a Palomino was.
Yeah. But you can picture what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
And he has a very calm voice, like he's described as being impassive. The female students find him attractive. Many of the students find him intimidating. So, and there's a couple pictures of him in the books in chapters, like the first chapter when we meet him, there's a more of a like a crude, simple drawing of him. And then in later when he teaches as a divination teacher, there's another illustrations. And I'm talking about like the original books, right? And he's always shown kind of as having this like hair that's kind of long, like not like he has a bob basically.
Yeah.
It's not quite to his shoulders. There's a more detailed drawing in the I don't know what the chapter title is, but when he becomes a divination teacher, they show him like in his classroom teaching and everything, and you see like the hoof print on his chest.
Yeah, so it's not long hair, but it's short. It's not short hair either. Like Renee said, it's more of a bob, which I guess they do it justice in the movies, but it's a little bit shorter in the movies than in that illustration, that rough illustration. For some reason, I imagine it being much longer and more like not necessarily dreads, but like that sort of length, like pretty long hair.
Yeah.
Can't imagine them getting haircuts too often.
That's true. I don't know why he has such a like sharp cut on his hair. Like it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like you think it would be like more like wild looking.
In the movie, in the first movie, he looks like he just went to like a barber or whatever and got his hair styled. It's not. Yeah. It doesn't look necessarily like rough and tumble.
Like
I guess
overgrown.
it does sort of look a little haphazard in some of the pictures, but it looks like he just got it cut. Like it doesn't look like he's been growing it for years.
Yeah. In the movie too, he has these like big ears, it looks like, and he's got like a full beard. And I just feel like he looks very intimidating. He just looks like bigger, older, I think, than like how I picture Firenze kind of in the book's description. But yeah, so do you want to share your fan cast?
My first fan cast would be Jason Momoa.
Oh, okay.
That
yeah.
was the first guy that came to mind almost immediately.
When you think of a centaur?
When I think of a centaur, a big burly like horseman, he seems to come to mind.
Okay, I can see it. So my cast is an actor named Tom Blythe. He's from he's an English actor. He's from the new Hunger Games movie, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I think he plays a young President Snow. I'm not super familiar with the Hunger Games universe. And he's in Billy the Kid, The Gilded Age. But he has really bright, I think they're blue or green eyes. And specifically in the Hunger Games movie, they have him as like having really, really light hair. I think his hair is naturally darker, something about him really reminds me of like the description of him from the books. I feel like he could play this role, and he could, like, I feel like he's the right age, like British and everything. So I feel like he could actually play like Firenze in the Max show if he wanted to. Yeah,
definitely being British helps you out a little bit. On that part, but I actually have never heard of this guy, but I'll definitely look out for him. You said he's in the new Hunger Games?
Yeah, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I haven't actually seen anything that he's been in. I've just seen like clips and pictures and stuff like that. Like when the Hunger Games movie came out and was being promoted and everything, I feel like I saw a lot of clips. So I'm just going off of appearance, not so much like personality. I'm just assuming that his acting will be strong enough. I mean, he's in a big like franchise movie, so I'm just like, okay, maybe he can
hoping that he pays off a little bit, not necessarily just a complete nepotism pick or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know him. I have no connection to him, but based on his physical appearance. So you know what, Tom, I'm out here, I'm working, I'm trying to get you get you some jobs here. Like, you know, can I get a cut? But
yeah, definitely. Actually, another fan cast that I thought of right as we were talking about this was Chris Evans, who is the Captain America in the Marvel universe. And then I think he really does it justice and really kind of fits that character in the later ones where he has more of a grown out beard and longer hair, sort of like slicked back and stuff. So just another one, maybe. Definitely not going to get cast for the Max show. That'd be cool if he was, but I think he's not British. So
yeah, I think he'd be a good one. And we know like he's, you know, been in a lot of movies and stuff. And like a lot of people think that he's handsome, right? And that's supposed to be the female students are supposed to think that he's handsome in the Harry Potter books. That concludes our fan casting for Firenze. And pretty much that wraps up the episode.
Thanks for joining us on this magical journey through the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Don't forget to rate and subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening. Next week, we will be discussing the scene where Harry gets sorted by the Sorting Hat. Spoiler alert, he is a Gryffindor, so hopefully everybody knew that already. Sorry if I spoiled that for you.
And he dies.
Until then, what? And he dies. Yes, yeah. So just we are trying to make sure the spoiler alerts are at the beginning of episodes every time. So if you don't know that he has died, and again, spoiler, he does die. Until then, happy reading, happy listening, and may your wand never break.